Welcome to the Better Relationships, Better Work webcast, where we explore how to make work better through the power of relationship. My name's Jason Lauritsen. I'm the author of 2 books, a leadership trainer and keynote speaker on a mission to fix how we treat people at work. I am delighted that you are here. Now, in today's episode, we talk about the importance of safety in relationships and the power of bearing witness to another human being. You'll learn about how to use boundaries to create freedom in any relationship, and specifically how you can take that to work and apply that to work relationships. And if you're a parent, this particular episode is going to be extra valuable because Jess shares some really great insights and tips from her relationship with her oldest daughter. My guest in today's episode is Jess Von Bank. Jess is a 20-year industry veteran and impassioned evangelist of the modern experience of work and the future of talent. She is the global leader of HR transformation and technology advisory for Mercer, and she's the leader of their Now of Work community, which is something you're going to hear more about in the episode. Jess is also the president of Diverse Daisies, a nonprofit to enrich and empower girls. She lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where she's raising her 3 daughters. You can learn more about Jess and how to connect with her in the episode description. It was an awesome conversation, and I hope you learn as much from it as I did. Here's Jess Von Bank. Jess, thank you for making time to join me to mine your relationships for a little bit of insight. I appreciate it.
This is going to be fun. This is the meeting I was most looking forward to this week. It's a little different than all the rest of my meetings.
I will try not to disappoint then. We better make this good. So we're going to start with getting to know you a little bit and a little bit about how you show up in relationships or how you think about relationships. And so the first question that I'm curious about is, where do you fall or place yourself on the introvert to extrovert scale?
I'm sure this will surprise some people who assume that I'm an always-on extrovert. I will say I do enjoy speaking, the stage. I enjoy working a room. I'm good at it. I love to talk to anybody. I have no fear around social circles and being sort of like life of the party. But what might surprise people is that I need to shut down pretty hard after that, not from an energy perspective. I just don't like it for all that long. And I value downtime. I value being alone. I value privacy more than people probably know. So I don't know what that means. I guess introverted, extrovert, but I enjoy both things equally. Let's say that.
As I'm asking this question of folks as we're having conversations, I'm learning that there's a lot more to this. I think people are starting to think of this in a very different way. It's less one or the other, and that there's some blending of it. I think there's the one really interesting thing is what you just hinted at is there's this sort of, I think, performative extroversion that many of us, especially that are in, whether we're entrepreneurs or we're in sort of a business that's facing the world or work that's facing the world, and you have to be out there and you have to have your brand out there and build relationships. And you can be an introvert that learns the skill of performative extroversion, I think. Yes. And that's a really interesting thing. And it's not performative in a bad way. It's performative in sort of a skillful way. So I appreciate you unpacking that a little bit. And I'm curious, when you talk about that like you can do the relationship piece and be out there and connect, but then you need this downtime. How does that impact your one-on-one relationships with people? How does that show up in the more personal relationships you have with people?
So as an example, if somebody gave me 2 options, you can go to a networking event or a happy hour with a big group of people, or you can have a glass of wine with a friend you haven't seen in a while and just catch up. I would much prefer the latter. Like, I sort of prefer more intimate conversation, and I prefer to sort of single task something. In fact, you might know I run a large community called The Now of Work with Jason Aberbook. We broadcast live every single Friday. We have a big showing up every single Friday. And I sort of get teased for, I pay so much, like Jason will try to text me on the side, just like some show notes or like, hey, you ask this next, or like side conversation. And I miss 90% of the side conversation because I'm so invested in the guest and the conversation at hand. That's what I prefer. I'm not good at sort of like spreading my attention. I don't enjoy spreading my attention super thin. I kind of enjoy deep diving. And that's probably true of my relationships too. I think select few important, intimate relationships are so much more valuable and enjoyable for me than trying to be, everything to everyone.
Kind of wish we could dive deep on this because there's so many layers to what you just said, but unfortunately not. That's a different podcast, different conversation, I guess. So, but I do want to, let's dig into then a little bit of these closer relationships. What would you say is the quality that you value most in a close friend?
So trust and safety come to mind, and I know where we're going to go. I'm like resisting the temptation of going down all the rabbit holes I know we probably should go down, but I think it's true across the board, personal, professional, every type of relationship. I think trust and a sense of safety, and I can expand on safety in a bit. For sure. Number one, absolutely. And that's also sort of the most important thing to me when I think about raising my kids is establishing an environment and a relationship bar that establishes those things first, everything else second.
So I suspect these might be interrelated then. The way I frame this question is in 5 words or less, what is the fastest way to lose you as a friend? I'm assuming that's probably connected to the same thing.
It is. I mean, I read your the kind of the format of the conversation in advance, and I knew you would ask me this, and it's to knowingly betray trust. And I say knowingly because we make mistakes, accidents happen. We don't realize what's important or valuable to somebody, and we do something that sort of slips up. But when you knowingly betray trust, then intentions aren't in the right place. And I don't waste a lot of time if we're off on that mark.
That's a really good distinction, I think, because certainly, and particularly with friends, right, that we all screw up. We're going to do dumb things. It's sort of what happens next. But that knowingly piece is a pretty important clarifier. So, well, I think that's a great foundation. This helps, I think, bring a little color to the conversation that we're about to have. And as you know, the homework I assigned to you coming into this was to think about 2 different relationships. One personal relationship that we could talk about, a personal relationship in your life that is strong and healthy and positive, so that we could mine that for some insights. And then we'll talk about a work relationship here in a minute. So what personal relationship are we going to talk about today?
Anybody who knows me at all knows that I am all about raising girls. In fact, I think I was put on this planet to raise girls, and I was given 3 of them of my own, but I don't even stop there. I think I should help elevate all girls, and I do. But the example that came to mind is the relationship I have with one of my daughters, my oldest. Her name is Ainsley. She's 14, soon to be 15. And it's a relationship I work a lot on. And I'm just using that example because there's a lot of work going into it right now because she's the oldest. So we're sort of blazing the trails, I think, for the younger 2 coming up behind her. They'll all be treated with this sort of, intent and care and purpose. But she's the first one. So we're sort of doing the most work together when we establish what the mother-daughter relationship we want to have looks like and feels like and why it's so important to us. So that's the one, honestly, was the first one that came to mind when I understood this conversation.
I love this. So let's talk about that. So I guess so let's start this. What kind of relationship are you trying to create with your daughter?
So the natural relationship, of course, is the fact that I'm her parent and I'm her same gender parent. I'm her mother. And so, and she grows up in two households. I don't think much would be different, honestly, if both of her parents were in the same household. I think I would still parent the same way that I do. I probably have a little bit more, sort of freedom to nothing is questions in my house, and I do what I want, and how she sort of lives and experiences the other household is sort of like, but we're very much joined from a co-parenting standpoint around certain foundational things. But other than that, like my house probably feels very different than the other house and that kind of thing. And so I take very seriously the role of a parent in all of the obvious ways, but I also don't want to do all the obvious things because I'm trying to raise future humans and women who aren't satisfied with the world that we're growing up in, that they're coming up into. And so when you raise little humans to be generally defiant and generally unsatisfied and willing to question status quo, the fact that also happens to be my teenage daughter is like, I'm like signing up for like hellstorms on my own behalf. Like, what am I doing here? Why am I grooming this intentionally? But it is intentional. And that means we have to have a certain kind of relationship for her to understand that rules still apply. I'm still mom. You're still a child who has to operate in the world a certain way. But then also, here are some things I want woman to young woman, that I want you to understand that you will always have support from me around.
So how do you make that work? Talk to me about sort of how that relationship works when you were sort of, how do you, or how have you invited, I guess, her into making that work with you? I guess I'm curious to the kind of some of the mechanics or sort of a peek into what that looks like.
So I don't think it doesn't like self-actualize until they're old enough. And we're there. We're definitely at the stage where now we're sort of living in the world that we've been creating. Because she is old enough to want to make certain decisions for herself. And I think if you're going to teach young people to have a voice and to be able to make decisions in their own regard, you have to give them probably a little bit more leash than we might be comfortable giving a 14-year-old. And, when you get to be a certain age, you do start defying authority and rules, and, you aren't necessarily happy with your middle school, high school existence and your environment. And you want to decide where you spend time, whether it's one household or another, or whether or not you're required to participate in family activities or this or that. Like, you want to make decisions on your own about the way you live and operate in the world. And so we sort of experiment a lot. I say, okay, I'll let you make this decision if we agree that this ground rule still applies, or, that kind of thing. She's everything from piercings to the future tattoos she's planning, to the way she dresses, to whether or not she continues playing a sport that she's been playing for 6 years. All of those things become up for conversation, and they might seem minor, but you're practicing independence and you're practicing independent authority. And all along, you're sort of testing the trust that you have in the relationship. I trust you to make the right decision when I'm advising and guiding you, and when I'm nowhere to be found. That's the important part. When I'm nowhere to be found, I also trust you to make the right decision. And everything you do either builds and reaffirms that trust, or tells me we went too far and we're not ready for that yet. And we back down and we start, back down at ground zero. And we do that, honestly, daily. It's a daily exercise in big and small decisions.
I think that's super interesting. I love the idea of understanding the desire for agency, right? The desire to make those decisions and make those choices, but making sure that you're having the conversations to kind of, set those boundaries, to clarify the ground rules, to clarify sort of where the guardrails are, because a lot of times I think that's a piece that gets overlooked. And I personally think a big reason that teenagers get so angry is because you find the guide, or you find the boundaries by tripping over them.
Yes.
Right. It's after the fact, as opposed to like, tell me where they are. That way, if I'm going to make a decision to go over them, at least I can knowingly do it, recognizing that there's going to be consequences coming my way.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
And
Anyways.
it's the thing when you're the parent, I feel like it would almost be easy, it might be easier if you're not also the parent that has to worry about their safety and that kind of thing. But I can't even count how many times I have said to my kids, you can't assume that everybody who has authority over you is the smartest person in the room and knows what's best for you. And so that sort of healthy questioning of things that are happening, or, how you speak for yourself or stand up for something you believe in, or say, I don't think this is fair. I want a different outcome for myself. Sort of teaching them to do that and then watching them do that and watching them do it with you. You really have to be willing to kind of stand in your own, kind of space that you created and see if it works. And what I love about Ainsley is that she, this is like the perfect kid. She's the perfect first kid to practice all of this with, because she's incredible. She's defiant in such a healthy way. She's incredibly, she wants everything now. She's incredibly impatient. She wants to have adult experiences. She wants everything to come now. She's anxious for all the milestones. She got in an Uber for the first time by herself just a few nights ago. There was a massive experiment. Like, oh my God, like none of us know if this is the right decision. But like she's been asking for it for months. I want to go somewhere on my own, and that feels very adult to her. And so we just sort of agree to experiment together. But it's tough when you're also the parent, like, this does not feel like a good idea, letting her Uber to a varsity basketball game 20 miles away. Like, what? Oh, okay. I guess we're doing this. It's a wild experiment, but she's the perfect one because she's pushing every thing that she can possibly push on. Everything is up for conversation, is up for grabs. I teach my kids to debate well and to ask for more. And my goodness, she does it with me. That's why trust is a super important foundation for us to work from.
Yeah, because if you without the trust, then that would break down pretty easily, right? If you have the trust, then when you say, okay, this is one that I can't give you.
Yes.
She knows, right? She knows, like, okay, you're not just messing with me or just, whatever. Like, okay, I get it. Doesn't mean that I'm going to like it. I might still be angry and storm away, but at least I know that we have that trust there. I trust you're looking out for my best interest. This webcast is sponsored by my longtime friends at Inspiring Workplaces. Now, if you are someone who's working to create an engaging and inspiring workplace for your employees, and of course you are, that's why you're here, then listen up. Inspiring Workplaces is a global community of tens of thousands of HR and employee experience professionals that you can join for free. As a member, you will gain access to thousands of articles and videos and podcasts and events that will help you change the world by changing the world of work. They are also home to the Inspiring Workplaces Awards that recognize the best workplaces in the world. You can learn about the application process at their website. So please go visit inspiring-workplaces.com to learn more and to join the community. That's inspiring-workplaces.com. If you could distill down to, is there a kind of a lesson that you could call out of this, or an insight out of kind of this, managing this relationship and how you're cultivating this? Because as you were talking, it literally was echoing in my ears kind of some of the ways that I hear, managers and leaders talking about their young employees. And they're not necessarily showing up for them in the same way you're showing up for your daughter. And so I think there's something really powerful about what we can learn here. So what would you distill for us in terms of a lesson? I mean, I wrote a couple things down already, but I'm curious what comes to mind for you.
So we're better at this now than we were when I could see she was going to be the one. Like, this is going to be the one to test me, test everything, but that's perfect. This is what I wanted in raising young, strong, healthy, self-conscious, self-aware girls with confidence and boldness. Like, this is kind of what I wanted. And wouldn't you know, she's going to be the perfect one to sort of test this. And we weren't good at it at first. Honestly, she's, she can be super assertive to the point of aggression, to the point of, she doesn't back down even when she knows game's over. It's like, you lost or you won, like, recognize where we're at and like time to back down. Like, she was not good at that at first. And we literally had to figure out, we waged battles, like I would toe to toe, like showdown. And it was exhausting. We were like literally exhausting each other, figuring out where those boundaries were or how we wanted to operate. And we figured out a de-escalation technique. I literally told her, we need to figure out de-escalation for ourselves, or this is never going to go well. She didn't know what that word meant. I mean, this was probably 4 years ago. She was younger, I had to explain to her what de-escalation actually meant. And we started this funny, like literally funny, like rather hilarious thing where when we reached that point, either one of us would like drop dead on the floor. Like, you would literally play dead. You would just like drop dead in like a sack of potatoes on the floor, and you would lay there playing dead. And the other one would like, almost literally be poking you like, what? You have to keep arguing with me. And no, you just play dead. And it was hilarious because we took it so literally. And that meant I'm tapping out. I'm going to be the one to call it right now. It means the conversation is over and should be over, or we've reached a point where I can't participate in this conversation in the way that I want to. And we need to like back off and come back at this and re-engage when like after the steam is let out of the kettle a little bit. And it actually became so hilarious that we did it. We would usually end up laughing and sort of forgetting what we were even talking about or fighting about. But that was important because we had to recognize and start respecting each other's boundaries, not just her for me. Like, mom's always right. That's not necessarily a healthy thing, to think that somebody's always right, always has power over you. That doesn't feel good. So it had to go the other way too, that sometimes it's me respecting her boundaries or respecting that she's not feeling seen, heard, validated, respected in the moment. And parental authority just adds to that. It just fuels that feeling of helplessness. And so you kind of have to like figure out how, where those boundaries exist and how you're going to recognize and respect that for each other. That was a huge lesson for us. We don't even need to do that as much anymore. But I think about that in the relationships we have where there is authority and influence and maybe not enough of a feeling of agency over oneself. And there is command and control in a lot of the relationships we experience in the workplace. And what do you do about that when somebody does have the ability to say or do or execute something that has direct impact on you and you get nothing to say about it? You don't get to play dead. Like, you just have to grin and bear it. That doesn't feel good either. And I guess it kind of makes me more conscientious about that.
Although I would say that I think there probably are a lot of people in their work relationship that when that happens to them, they do play dead at their job.
Yeah, I guess
just show up and quit. Like, I'm done. That's how you want to play it? Fine. I'll still be here, but I ain't giving you any more than I absolutely have to. So I think that probably happens more than we think. It's just not explicit. It's not a de-escalation technique. It is a passive-aggressive response technique, right? Trying to claim power. So interesting. That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So many lessons in there. We'll come back to that in a second. But I do want to take a moment to touch on this second relationship, on a work relationship that you feel has had really significant positive impact on you, and learn a little bit from that as well. So can you tell us a little bit about what relationship you formed through work that we can talk about?
Yeah, I think it's It's the relationship that people ask me a lot about, to be honest. And it's the one I have with Jason Averbook. I've worked with him for, I guess it's more than 6 years now. About a year into the inception of LeapGen, he asked me to come aboard and help build our brand and community and thought leadership and point of view in the market, help, kind of continue to scale a vendor services practice we had as part of LeapGen. And so I came aboard in a building role, right? And Jason said something to me that feels a little similar to the conversation we just had. And that was to give me as big a yard to run in as possible, but to keep a little bit of an electric fence, an invisible fence around it, so that I could not run out in traffic and hurt myself. Not that I like being compared to somebody's pet, but you get the analogy. Yep. It was, please do and challenge and experiment and act fast and run hard against as much as you can. And I'm going to let you, and my job is to give you that much wide berth and to create that space for you, but also to make sure that, that we don't screw up too badly to the point of no return. And that was a very successful way to start our relationship. It has served us well. But even more than that, and even though I've been his direct, I guess, at points along the way. But he'd be the first to correct me or anyone if I ever said I work for him. I always worked with him. That was always a correction and a point of distinction he makes about anybody who works under him in a hierarchical sort of way. Nobody works under him. Everybody works alongside and with him. And I think that's a really important leadership move to make. The reason people ask me about our relationship so often is because we do a lot of thought leadership and collaboration and speaking. We're very much present in the industry we work in a sort of thought leadership, co-branded sort of way, if you will. And that includes how we lead a global community, a peer community of people who work in and around the HR space. And people see us lead that community alongside each other in kind of a facilitation sort of way. We talk to each other, but it's in the way of leading conversation in a community. And we talk about a lot of stuff. And people observe the way we talk to each other and treat each other, and they ask a lot about it. We've been doing it for 4 years, this community and live broadcast every week. And people still on a weekly basis comment on, ask about, sort of wonder about the nature of this relationship because it's so safe and trusting. And when you do that with each other and you sort of show what that looks like in practice, you create that space for everybody to participate in a certain way. And we have an actual community where that exists, but every single workplace, every single team, microculture, department, that everything is a community. I think of everything as a community. And I think when two leaders show what that looks like in practice and are very intentional about practicing with each other and in front of others, that gives permission for that space to exist. That sets the bar for that level of trust and psychological safety. And this is what culture looks like and feels like in practice, in behavioral practice. You're constantly emulating what that is for others, and you're giving them sort of the ways and permission to participate in the same way. I hope that makes sense.
It does. And I think I want to dig just a tiny bit deeper on this, or at least maybe try to extract something from that, because I think people see it, and I would say, yes, it creates permission, but I also think there's just a craving for it. I think people, we so deeply want to feel safe, and when we see it, I think it creates kind of a longing or a yearning, like, wow, I want relationships like that, or I wish I was in a team like that, or worked for leaders like that. And so as you think about you and Jason and how you've created this safety, or you have this safety, what would be sort of one thing that you think is one of the most important things that has happened, or is a way that you interact that has created that safety that makes it so palpable that others can sense it? Is there a lesson or a practice you can pull out for us?
I think you have to know a person well enough to know what's important to them and what's valuable to them, and be willing to honor and respect that. I've belonged to other groups outside of the corporate workspace, that we operate, that we all, the world of work. I've been part of like women's empowerment groups and community groups and that kind of thing, where you talk a lot about holding space for or witnessing one another as humans. And, without sounding woo-woo, and I'm not really that woo-woo, but I do believe that if we could practice some of that, and get out of our work brains a little bit, like just witnessing another person, witnessing their fear, their hopes, their uncertainty, wondering, challenging something, admitting what they don't know. I think we get good at that in our intimate relationships with practice, and maybe in some of my more woo-woo circles, there's actual language for it as well. I think when you get inside the workplace, we don't have the same language for it. We probably try words like culture and belonging and stuff like that. And more recently, we've introduced psychological safety in the workplace. That's amazing. That's good. Like, whatever, throw whatever buzzword you need to throw at it. It's the same concept of just letting a person show up as their full, authentic, which means imperfect self, and just being willing to stand witness to that. No questioning, no judgment, no fear of repercussions. Unfortunately, in the workplace, you kind of said it earlier, we hedge our bets a little bit because we're not sure somebody deserves our full authentic self, especially if we are at all disadvantaged or underrepresented or lack power or agency. There's a lot of reservation, and we sort of hedge our bets. And so being willing to go all in requires a whole lot of, we've got to meet each other in the middle. So coming back around, I think it's literally just standing in, sort of observation of and in witness of another person, everything they stand for, their belief system, what's important to them, their purpose, with no judgment. Jason's honestly really, really good at that. He wants to know. He's curious. He cares. If he doesn't understand all of that, it's hard to show up for all of that. And so you have to have that sort of level of, I don't know if it's empathy or curiosity, or honestly, I think it's love. I think that's the definition of love.
Yeah. And if anyone observes the two of you together, it's pretty clear, right? I mean, I think you both show up fully, and then there's that relationship or that acceptance of sort of all of it together. And I think that's the safety piece that I think people are drawn to, because that's what people want, right? You want that. And sadly, I think probably you get asked about it a lot, because if we're honest, I think a lot of people struggle to find that even in their marriages or in their friendships with others. And so it's like when you see it, you're like, tell me how to do this. So thank you for giving us a peek into that. We could probably do a whole series about that, Jess, but we need to land this plane. We need to bring this home. And so, my passion in getting into this is, what can we learn from these personal relationships that we can now pull back into how to make work better, how to make the work relationship better for people? And so I want to go back to the list of things. There was a whole list of things that I wrote down in terms of lessons from your relationship with Ainsley. There's things like encourage experiments. It's like everything starts with trust. You have to build trust first. But one of the things that really stuck for me was this, how to, the relationship you have with her, that where you're creating or encouraging agency or taking agency, but you're sort of balancing that up against a clarity of boundaries,
Mm.
ground rules, whatever that is. And then you said the same thing with Jason, that was kind of where your relationship started, was I want you to take tons of chances, go crazy, like do great work. Here's the boundaries. Here's the edges. And so I'm curious, I mean, like it sounds like Jason did that for you, but I'm curious how else you have found to apply that as a leader or in working with people at work, to help make that work relationship work better for people. What does that look like in practice in the workplace?
Mm. I think we start way ahead, and we make a lot of assumptions without starting literally at ground zero and asking, what would you like this to look like? What do you want out of it? Like Ainsley has actually articulated to me, she actually sent me a TikTok, and I said, is this on Instagram for old people? I don't use TikTok, but she sent me a little TikTok about an account she follows that is a mom-daughter duo, big account, lots of followers, and they record themselves a lot. Everything they put out is their own conversations with each other. And they're usually sitting at a table, like doing their makeup or getting ready to go out or something. And they're recording and they're just talking to each other. And the clip that she sent me was the daughter asking the mom, what made you trust me? And the mom said, you never gave me a reason not to. There have been a few things we've had to correct along the way, but they always started in that place of trust. She sent the clip to me, and I said, what about this made you send it to me? And she said, that's what I want for us. And I said, perfect. I think we're doing a pretty good job. What do you think? Is there something else we should be doing or adding? And she said, I want to make sure that I can always tell you anything. I said, yep, I think we have established that, but I'll keep reestablishing that. And she said, all of my secrets, Mom. And that means I don't want to be scared about what you'll think. And that was really important for her to articulate. And I was like, well, is there something now? Like, is there something coming now? And she's like, no. She's just paving the way for when it's needed. I want to know that safety net is there. And it wasn't, that happened to be the conversation, but it's the idea of the conversation, clear articulation of what this looks like, what our healthy relationship looks like in practice. She shared a specific example with me, and that was important. And I actually saw that play out in a recent meeting inside the workplace, working with some new team members in a global, sort of COE type thing. And we were having one of our first strategy meetings together. So, there's an agenda and there's like a topic at hand, but also we don't know how to work with each other yet. And one participant in this meeting stopped toward the end of the meeting and said, I'm aware that I'm super verbose. Like I talk a lot and I love talking and I'm like, blah, 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 And she called out one of the other team members and said, I don't think you communicate the same way that I do. And I would love to know how to hear you more. What a self-aware question. Like literally give me an example of how you like to make contribution in a meeting like this, because I feel like I've taken up all the airtime and I'm really good at that. And the other team member shared exactly how she likes to make contribution, and that is to absorb and think about and ingest, go away for a little while, distill, synthesize, and come back with bulleted thoughts. And so this happened to be working for her because that's what she was doing. But the fact that was called out, I want to make sure I know how to hear you best and how this works. That I don't think we stop to articulate and give really specific examples. What a great practice. I literally want to remember that everywhere and make sure that I do something. What a way to honor somebody. When I said earlier, witnessing somebody, what a way to witness and honor somebody. I feel like you and I are super different, and that could be really good and healthy for us. But that also means I need to understand how to hear your contribution. This feels like a whole DEI conversation, by the way, but I thought that was such a great example.
And it's a beautiful example of how relationships should work, right? I mean, I think there's two things in there that are really powerful. One, you have someone who they've spent some time understanding who they are and how they show up. And the impact that has on others. And there's a curiosity there about others. And I know that other people don't show up the same way. And so I'm going to have to ask and invite you to share. And then it was the third piece of that, I guess, is then the other person saying, yeah, no, actually here it is for me, because this person had thought of like, what a beautiful thing. Now you can step forward in that relationship with that foundation of understanding that you described earlier. Like that's an incredible example. So that feels like an awesome way to end this, to wrap this up, Jess. This has been fantastic, such great insight and lessons. Anybody that's a parent listening to this, I think, is going to go away with some good stuff and a good call to action. I know I certainly am. So I'm so appreciative of you making the time and sharing your insights. This was really great.
Oh, thanks for having the conversation. I mean, the parenting part is nerve-wracking, trust me. But I think it's easy to default to what feels easy and comfortable. And I think you get something a little bit better if you're willing to try and maybe be a little uncomfortable. But again, like safe space to experiment together and make sure it's working for everybody and nobody's running out into traffic.
Yeah, we don't want anybody in traffic. So that's a great send off. Jess, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode. More importantly, I hope you learned something from the episode that can help you right away. Now, if you'd like to reflect on what you can learn from your own healthy, positive relationships to make work better, I've included a link in the description below where you can access and download what I call the relationship reflection exercise. This includes the same questions that I ask each of my guests to reflect on prior to our conversation on the webcast. Also, if you found today's episode valuable, I'd ask 3 quick favors of you. Number 1, please like the episode. By liking the video and adding a comment if something spoke to you or stood out to you as really significant, you give me some great and valuable feedback, but you also help others find the video. I'd also ask you to subscribe to the channel. That does 2 important things. 1, it makes sure that you won't miss any upcoming episodes, and it sends me the message that you like the kind of content that I'm creating here. And finally, please share this video with someone who you think might benefit. What better gift can you give someone than the gift of better relationships and a better work experience? I'm really grateful that you were here today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.